in defense of bro science, as if it needs defending, right? Oh, boy. I'm going to open up a can of worms here, and this will be an unpopular opinion, although, who cares, right? Because we shouldn't care about whether or not an opinion is popular. We should care about whether or not an opinion is, valid or has evidence to support it, right? Yeah, everyone's entitled to their opinion. No, not really. Can you provide evidence to support your opinion is really where we should go with that. It's my opinion that the sky is purple. That's a stupid opinion. Bro science. Everyone loves to bash bro science. Oh, bros, they're so dumb. And people will question me at times, and maybe this deserves its own video, of why I listen to bodybuilders, because I'm not a bodybuilder. So why would I listen to bodybuilders? Well, I listen to bodybuilders because bodybuilders are really good at getting big. You might learn something. Now, I have no interest in stepping on the stage of the Olympia, but, if you're working with athletes and they need to get bigger, yeah, you might implement some bodybuilding. I know, gasp. But what about sport-specific training? Listen, you can say whatever you like. We're going to do ladder drills today because somehow that makes you better at running. But when it comes to sport-specific training, go practice your damn sport. Like, what's more sport-specific than me playing hockey? That's scrimmage. That's pretty sport-specific. So, in any case, I'm going to be very honest with you. When I was growing up playing hockey, you know what helped me more than anything else? It wasn't all those drills I did. Because I tell you what, I was the fastest kid on the team, and I could skate in and out of cones all day. That didn't help me. And I could stick handle like you wouldn't believe, because that's all I did. I just obsessively practiced stick handling everywhere I went. Whether it was a tennis ball or whatever, I was always practicing. Just, it's ridiculous if you stopped and thought about how much practice I put in. And I wasn't any good. I've talked about this before. I was like the fastest skater on my team. I was the best skater on my team. I could do all these things. I could pick off targets in the net all day long because I practiced all these skills over and over and over again. You put me in the game and I was terrible. And then I told you how a coach changed my life, because this coach was like, why are you trying to sit in front of the net? Like, what are you doing in the slot? You're the smallest guy on the team. I was like, yeah. It's like, that's where I'm supposed to be. He was like, no. He said, you need to play like Wayne Gretzky. You need to keep moving at all times and play behind the net. And I was like, play behind the net? What the hell are you talking about? Well, here's the thing. Playing behind the net is a skill that I only learned through us doing scrimmaging. So we would practice. What a radical concept. We would practice the fucking game. So, practicing your sport is the most sport-specific thing you can do. Now, back to bro science and bodybuilding. If you wanted to get bigger, though, you might do some bodybuilding. Yes, you might. And I will tell you right now that it works. You can get bigger. Now, is that going to make you necessarily better at your sport? I don't know. It depends. What's your sport? Certainly helps to be bigger in football. Certainly helps to be bigger in hockey. But maybe it doesn't help you to be bigger if you're a jockey. So this is all comes down to context too, okay? Anyways, bro science. Why do I listen to bodybuilders? Because bodybuilders have a lot of things figured out that everyone else hasn't figured out yet. And so the first thing I'm going to jump on is the one that people love to hate the most is muscle confusion. The Wendler principles, right? Or the Weider principles, sorry, not Wendler. Sorry, Jim. Weider principles, right? Muscle confusion. Yes, muscle confusion. You can't confuse a muscle, and so everyone makes fun of this and says, oh, that's dumb. But aside from the fact that you don't like the term, and it's probably a misnomer, it's the wrong term, what is muscle confusion in practice? And it's just simply variation. So, if you've been bench pressing with a barbell and doing flat bench press for, 8 weeks, switch to incline press. And if you've been doing that for 8 weeks, switch to a dumbbell press. And if you've been doing back squats for 8 weeks, switch to a front squat. Hold on, this sounds a little bit like a conjugate system. Yeah. that you keep changing the lift? It makes sense. Dante Trudel even talks about this. If you have been hammering some lift for a long time and you're not stopped making progress, switch to a different lift. So, if you've been doing dumbbell overhead presses for a long time and suddenly you stop making progress on it, switch to a different pressing movement. Switch to a different shoulder movement. You've been doing RDLs and, your hamstrings aren't growing, switch to hamstring curls. Like, this is not that radical of a concept when you actually put it into practice. So people don't like the term muscle confusion because you can't confuse a muscle. But in reality, muscle confusion just meant for you to vary your exercises. So, and we've all done this. Like, if you think that you haven't done this at some point in time, take a look through your old programs. I hope you write them down. You should keep a logbook. You plateaued on something, you changed movements, and suddenly your lift started going back up again. It's not that hard of a thing for us to grasp this concept. I realize that people don't like the term muscle confusion, but it's just variation. That's all it is. It's just variation. Okay, so that's one good example. Let's pick another one that's really controversial. The mind-muscle connection. Oh, there's no such thing. Mind-muscle connection. Mind-muscle connection. You mean muscle control. You see, it's another misnomer. It doesn't mean exactly what the words would imply to you. What is it? It's actually muscle control. And, there are good examples of this. Check out the guys from, way, way back. I think it's, it has a weird name, like Maxic or something like that. I think the, Golden Era Bookworm or something like that did a video, and you can see this guy could control his abs, unbelievably. Okay. When you do a pull-up, are you pulling with your bicep or are you pulling with your lats? Some people have enough muscle control that they're able to purposely engage their lat when they do that movement. So what if this muscle control thing, right? What if that matters? Like, when you do a row, are you just pulling with your arms or are you engaging your lats? When you squat, are you just good morning this thing and your posterior chain takes over and you fold up and then pop back up? Or are you maintaining good upright position and really placing the load on your quads? You can feel this. You can feel what muscles are working. It's called muscle control. The term that gets tossed around, it's a misnomer, is mind-muscle connection. Right? Or the mind-muscle connection. My mind is connected to the muscle group that's working. But I tell you what, you can tell. You can tell someone who's been in the gym for a long time. This takes a long time to develop. The ability to contract the muscle that you want to be doing the work and place the load on that muscle. It's muscle control. Now, what is more muscle control than being able to flex and hit poses? There are guys who, if I said to you, hey, flex your pec, can literally just flex one pec. And there are guys who can't. If I told you to flex your quad, some guys can't do it, and other guys flex their quad, and it looks amazing. You get all those ripples and the definition and all that separation, okay? Some guys can't do it. Flex your tricep, and these guys get this perfect horseshoe-looking thing in their tricep. That is muscle control. Your ability to hit bodybuilding poses, yes, is muscle control. You can contract a single muscle. I can't do it, but certainly some people can. I mean, like I gave the example, I said it's the Golden Era Bookworm. He has a video. You can find it. Literally, the screenshot of the video is a guy with his abs, they look bizarre. He's contracted them all together in this weird line. That is muscle control. Now, you might call it mind-muscle connection, but what is it really? It's just muscle control. When you bench press, are you bench pressing with your triceps or are you bench pressing with your pecs? And sometimes you can actually feel it. If you're really dialed in, you can tell, are my triceps doing the work or are my pecs actually engaging? Now, if you're a power lifter, it doesn't fucking matter. Who cares? The point is for you to move the bar. In fact, you should try to move the bar using the least amount of muscle with the least amount of effort. That way you can use more weight. But if you're a bodybuilder, maybe you're trying to target some specific muscle, so muscle control comes in, okay? A lot of things in bro science end up being validated by actual science too. This whole idea of training lengthened, positions. The overhead tricep extension is superior to a skull crusher because it stretches the muscle. It's a longer range of motion. Deep squats are better than, quarter squats because it stretches the muscle. Okay, that's another thing that was bro science for a long time. Now it's, oh yeah, that's correct. Yeah. The idea of a high protein diet. That used to be bro science. Now we're all like, oh shit, high protein is the way to go. This idea of eating every 3 hours to feed the muscle. Well, we've had this discussion before in previous videos. I've talked about this. It doesn't really matter for your weight on the scale, right? But I assume you care more about whether or not you're muscle versus fat. So, yes, calories in, calories out, all that bullshit that people love to spout. Sure, you're 185 on the scale versus being 185 on the scale, regardless of how you distribute your calories and all this stuff like that. But I tell you what, if you train hard, having multiple meals spread out across the day, you are going to have better workouts. You're going to have better recovery. You'll probably even have better digestion. I certainly do. I digest better having multiple small meals than one big meal. And, the thing of it is that those multiple small meals across the day prevent you from getting overly hungry and then overeating at night. A lot of people eat a small breakfast, a small lunch, and then they overeat at dinner. Well, what if you thought about that and spread it out across the day? So, like, for breakfast, you're not all that hungry, but you go ahead and eat a little extra. Eat a little more than you're actually hungry for at breakfast. You might find then that at lunch, you eat a moderate lunch, and then at dinner, you're not as hungry as you are. And so, on other days. And so at dinner, you tend to not overeat then because you ate enough for breakfast and ate enough for lunch that now at dinner, you don't overeat. But when people undereat for breakfast and undereat for lunch, then they overeat at dinner. You see, there's more to this game than just calories in, calories out, because you're not a robot. So being hungry and satiety, those things matter. I know Lane Norton will jump on me and tell me they don't matter, but they do. I swear to God they do. If I can't manage my hunger and my satiety, I will overeat. So will you, because we're humans. You can only be hungry for so long. Like, oh, I'm just going to starve myself lean. Good luck with that. Go on that 600 calorie diet where all you eat is, tuna and water. Let me know how long you can stick to it before you go ahead and eat something that you weren't supposed to eat. So eat something other than tuna, okay? There's a lot of stuff to this. The bro science gets made fun of and bashed all the time, and yet these things work. It's like I did the video explaining fasted cardio. Yeah, there is one study showing that it didn't make any difference, even though if you read the data, the fasted group actually lost more fat, but it wasn't statistically significant, okay? And the thing that you have to ask yourself here is, well, does a different strategy apply when I'm trying to get stage lean? Because if you're at 15% body fat trying to go to 12% body fat, it takes a different strategy than for you to go from 8% body fat to 6% body fat. And that should be logical to you, because it doesn't take as much work to go from a 100-pound squat to a 110-pound squat as it takes for you to go from a 1,000-pound squat to a 1,010-pound squat. It's 10 pounds and 10 pounds. Yeah, but when you're at 1,000 pounds already, putting another 10 pounds on the bar is really fucking hard. When you're only at 100 pounds, it's not very hard to put another 10 pounds on the bar. And I know, percentage-wise, it's very small, right? Percentage-wise, adding 10 pounds to 1,000 is not that much of a percentage increase. However, it's very, very hard because you're at this limit. So when you're already 275 pounds of muscle and you want to add 10 more pounds of muscle, very, very hard. When you weigh 110 and you want to add 10 pounds of muscle, it's not hard to add 10 pounds of muscle. So when you are 300 pounds at 50% body fat, it's very easy for you to lose 10 pounds of body fat. When you're already at 10% body fat, losing another 10 pounds of body fat is very hard. You might have to do fasted cardio, and it might have a different effect because you're already so lean. You see, So there's a lot of things in bro science that are actually correct. You just have to wait, and you have to wait for the studies to come out. Lots of studies have confirmed things that we knew all along. These bodybuilders doing certain things, turns out later on we do a study and it's like, oh gosh, that actually does work. Okay? Now that's not to say, I will be very quick to say that, this is the last part of the video here, is that not everything in bro science actually pans out. Okay, so you'll hear guys claim that this drug or that drug is more anabolic than some other drug, and in research we clearly see that the protein, protein synthesis, the accumulation of muscle, is roughly the same regardless of which androgen you use. They're not that magically different. Now they are different though in terms of neurological things. Okay, and that is a big factor here. So definitely guys feel different on different drugs. Some drugs increase aggression, some drugs increase your energy. You just, like guys talk about tren and how they have so much energy all the time they can't even sleep anymore. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean you're gaining muscle at a faster rate than had you been using, say, DECA. Okay, it's a 19 nor versus a 19 nor. The amount of protein, synthesis and the accumulation of muscle that's going on here is not significantly different between these drugs, but you may find that one drug is different than another in terms of its neurological effects. People like to use things like Anadrol because it increases your strength. There are things like halotestin that make you more aggressive, okay? But the amount of protein that's being laid down and synthesized into your muscle is not that significantly different from one drug to another. So there's something to be said about bro science, is that a lot of times people, I swear to you, this is bizarre to me because I don't play with these things. But I listen to lots of guys that talk about these things, and the thing I always wonder to myself is, why would you take a drug that has lots of side effects when there are other options that have less side effects? But I have no idea. I'm sure someone has an explanation to that. If you do, go ahead and comment below. I don't know anything. I don't have any experience with these things, but to me, when I hear guys talk about, tren flu and all these horrible things that happen to them with tren, I'm like, why the fuck would anyone take that? What do I know, though? Maybe that's preferential to whatever happens when you take a different drug. I don't know. Other things in bro science, PCT. PCT is totally bro science. We now have studies showing that that's not true. Now, don't get me wrong. There are studies claiming that PCT works, but you have to look at those studies very critically. Look at the study design and look at the outcomes. It's not like people came back with testosterone levels that were higher than their original baseline. It's just that when they came off, they were at almost nothing, and then they recovered some of their, HPTA. The thing you have to ask yourself here, though, is did the drugs make a difference? And no, they didn't. This has been confirmed repeatedly. So whether you just come off cold turkey and you just wait, or you come off and take a whole bunch of things, the recovery time is roughly the same. In fact, actually, a lot of these things are counterintuitive. Guys are like, I'm going to use HCG. And it's like, well, HCG mimics luteinizing hormone. So you're actually just continuing to suppress your pituitary gland. Yeah, I know. You're like, well, I took HCG and my testosterone level went back up. Yeah, and then when you stop the HCG, your testosterone level is going to flatten out again because you've been suppressing your pituitary gland. So all you've done is just prolong the suppression. This has been validated repeatedly. There are actual studies looking at this stuff. There's something actually called, anabolic steroid-induced hypogonadism. Dr. Michael Scally has written about it at length. This is something that bro science claims you can fix, and there are some very poorly designed studies claiming that you can fix, but in reality, we now have good studies that show that if people just came off and did nothing, they would recover in roughly the same amount of time as all the people who are taking a million different things to do it. So, and the work of Harrison Pope, I think I have a video on this. I may or may not. But the point is that basically after 50 weeks of use, and that doesn't matter how you break them up, if it's 50 weeks continuous or you do cycles of 10 weeks at a time or whatever, after 50 weeks of use, you have atrophied enough of the cells in your testicles that you're now permanently going to be below whatever your normal baseline would be. Okay, so that's a bro science thing. Okay, and that's I'm pointing out to you that not all of bro science is correct. But that's not that we should throw things out either, because like guys talk about the pump, and you'll see this now. This is like the science-based guys, like the pump has nothing to do with it. And I disagree, actually. And I disagree mechanistically, because we know that BFR, blood flow restriction, if you restrict the venous return, only the venous return, by the way, those of you doing this with super tight cuffs are doing it incorrectly. You want just enough pressure that you're restricting the venous return, which causes more of this blood to accumulate in the muscle. And this is important because it actually will trap something called phosphatidic acid. You guys can look that up. People have even used phosphatidic acid as a supplement. And phosphatidic acid will locally stimulate mTOR C1. So mTOR complex 1 stimulates muscle protein synthesis. So therefore, if BFR actually does have some effect on muscle growth, and phosphatidic acid has an effect on muscle growth, then we could easily make the conclusion, just based on mechanisms alone, that the pump is contributing something to muscle growth. Now, this is the thing that is important here. I want you to understand this. Like calories and hormones, these things are inextricable. If you increase your caloric intake, it changes your hormones. If you decrease your caloric intake, it changes your hormones. So the same thing is true of the pump. You can't isolate the pump by itself. You have to apply mechanical tension, and you have to do a certain number of reps to pump blood into the muscle tissue that is being isolated here. Let's say we're doing a bicep curl, okay? And that cell swelling actually has an effect that's similar to blood flow restriction, because now that muscle pumps up and has restricted blood flow for the venous return. So the thing is, you can't isolate that by itself. These things happen together. So when we talk about hypertrophy, it isn't just mechanical tension. It isn't just the accumulation of metabolites. It isn't just hypoxia in the muscle. It isn't just blood flow restriction. It's all of those things, and all of those things occur at the same time. They are inextricable. You can't isolate just one by itself. So therefore, we have to, it's kind of like, I hate to bring this up, but like people talk about CBD versus THC and this full spectrum stuff and all these different concepts around it, right? And there's this like, when you isolate something by itself, you're not going to necessarily get the same effect as taking something in its full state, if that makes sense. Like vitamin C taken as an isolated supplement isn't the same as you eating an orange to get your vitamin C. Taking fish oil, DHA supplements, are not as effective as eating fish. There's something about eating fish that is superior to you taking a supplement. And the thing is that there is this entourage effect, is what is referred to in THC and CBD, the entourage effect, that when you get the full, entourage, when you get the full spectrum of all the different cannabinoids, it's more effective than any of them by itself. You could look at this with turmeric versus, isolating a single thing like bis-methoxycurcuminoid, right? The full spectrum seems to be more effective than isolating just one of these compounds by itself. And so the same thing can be said then, that when you lift weights, there are multiple mechanisms going on at the same time, that any of those things isolated by itself would not be enough to stimulate hypertrophy. It's the entourage effect, yes, of all of those things at once. So the point being here that there's always something going on there. Bro science isn't just like shit that just people just made up. They've obviously made some type of observation over time. The accuracy of that observation can be questioned. The mechanism that's actually occurring can be questioned, right? Sometimes people think something works, and it does work, but it works for a different reason than they think it works. Okay? Every time I whistle, my dog comes. Okay? Well, it must be my whistling that makes the dog come. Or it could be that even when I talk, my dog comes running into the room. Why? Well, because it's just basically my dog responds to noise. So whenever I make a noise, my dog comes running to me. Okay? So is there anything special about whistling? Nope, because my dog doesn't even care if I cough. If I cough or sneeze, my dog comes running into the room. So I could sit here and tell you, oh, my dog comes every time I whistle. But the reality is, my dog comes running into the room anytime I make a noise, period. So, does it work? Yeah. And my observation is that when I whistle, he comes running to the room. Yeah. But in reality, he just comes running to the room anytime I make any noise whatsoever. So oftentimes we think something and it's inaccurate because it doesn't catch the full picture. Okay? So there you guys have it, and that's just a few things. If you have something specific, go ahead and comment below. There's a whole bunch of myths and things like that, and there's a lot of bro science out there, but a lot of times people are observing something that actually does have some validity. It's just that oftentimes we misunderstand the actual mechanism that is occurring. So, if you have a really hard workout and your muscles are pumped afterwards, I have never experienced the pump, by the way. So, if the pump is so important, I have never experienced this pump in my entire life. I don't care what I do. I could do sets of 50 and I don't feel a pump. I've never felt a pump. I have no idea what a pump feels like. I have never felt pumped, and yet I still was able to grow muscle. So, point being though, if you did a workout and you feel a pump, okay, you probably did enough mechanical tension and enough, repetitions that you have stimulated all these other things going on at the same time. Like I pointed out, that phosphatidic acid, like that's something that you should look at. There is so much more to this than we realize. And sometimes people stumble upon the right practice. They're doing the right thing for the wrong reason, and that doesn't matter, because as long as they're doing the right thing, that's what really matters. If I told you, oh, I eat, beef 5 times a day because, beef is muscle, so therefore I think I'm just eating muscle. And in reality, the truth is that, the practice works, but the actual mechanism behind it is that it's high in leucine, and that's why it's stimulating, the muscle protein synthesis multiple times a day. It's like that. This concept, oh, I drink milk because that's what growing babies drink, and that's why they grow. And it's like, no, it's because of the leucine content. It's the right practice. You're doing the right thing. It's just you don't understand why it works. That happens. And a lot of bro science is just a situation where they're doing the right thing. They just don't fully understand why it works, or they have a flawed reasoning for why it works. They don't really understand why it works, but it works. So before you discount something, ask yourself whether or not it actually works first. Like, does this actually work? Forget the reasoning behind it. Does this actually work? Yes? Okay, then there must be some mechanism, and we just simply need to dive deeper. So that's my defense of bro science to you. A lot of times these people are doing the right things, even if they're doing them for the wrong reason, or they have a flawed logic behind it.